Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Andy Kliske, the Idaho NSF EPSCoR Project Director, and it's really great to have you on for this EPSCoR Track-1 listening session. It's listening because on the one hand, at the moment you're listening to me, but then as we get past the presentation I have, it'll be an opportunity for Rick and I to be listening to what you have to say. So it will operate both ways. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the presentation, PowerPoint presentation.
Yep.
Great. So what I'm planning to do, provide a very brief overview of EPSCoR generally and the NSF EPSCoR Track-1 program. Then talk briefly about the process and timeline for developing Idaho's next NSF EPSCoR RII, that's Research Infrastructure Improvement Track-1 proposal. Then I'd like to outline some of the key national, state and institutional priorities and factors that are being considered as we start to develop the next proposal. And that support this sort of strategic SWOT analysis that we're currently started on to support the development of the process and the proposal. And then we'll open it up for Q&A and discussion input from all of you that wish to. So a little bit about the National Science Foundation's EPSCoR program. So EPSCoR, for those that aren't familiar, is the established program to stimulate competitive research. And from NSF's perspective, there's sort of two facets to it: increasing research capacity and competitiveness, particularly across the United States in all areas. And so the EPSCoR programs are intended to provide a way for relatively underfunded states from an NSF perspective to enhance their competitiveness and research funding and general capacity. The program aims to improve specifically, and this is particular to Track-1, but also the other track programs, jurisdictional capacity. For us, that means the state of Idaho, our statewide capacity in areas of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, research and education. And it has to be aligned with the state, in this case, the state of Idaho's science and technology priorities. So it's both a national program, but very, very distinctly tied to state needs, particularly in workforce development. A little sort of broad background about EPSCoR and EPSCoR-like programs. NSF EPSCoR is just one of 6 federal agencies that have an EPSCoR program or EPSCoR-like program. NIH, National Institutes of Health, have what's called the IDEA program, and that supports INBRIs and COBRIs, and Idaho has a statewide INBRI, and it has several COBRIs at different institutions, Boise State University, University of Idaho, and this one at the Veteran Medical Affairs Institution as well in Idaho. And NSF and NIH are the largest two in terms of dollar funding. Clearly, NIH is the largest at almost $400 million for the current fiscal year. For NSF, we're at about $190 million for the current FY20. That's dollars appropriated just to the EPSCoR program in NSF, not other non-EPSCoR funding, which is substantially more. Department of Energy have a small program. USDA has a reasonable program. NASA has an EPSCoR program as well as its broader space program, and Matthew Bernard's the director for Idaho's EPSCoR, NASA EPSCoR and space programs is on the call today. And then DoD have a small DEPSCoR program that has just come back out of being mothballed for a while. That's small. So I'm going to be focusing on National Science Foundation, but each of these programs all have broadly the same intent to enhance research competitiveness, but they each do it in very different ways. So today we're focusing on NSF and on the Track-1. We have Track-2 programs which are multi-jurisdiction, and Idaho is involved in several Track-2s, including Track-2s that are led by institutions in Idaho, and then Track 4 is the early career fellowship program that partners with other institutions and research agencies. A little bit about the trajectory of funding over the last 10 years in Idaho, and this is specifically NSF dollars, non-EPSCoR dollars. So this is where we're trying to make a difference with respect to the NSF program to enhance our non-EPSCoR competitive research dollars. And we've sort of increased our funding over the last 10 years or so. Currently, the FY19 at just a little under 31 million funding to Idaho, which represents about a 64% increase since 2012. And in fact, the metric that we're really focused on is the percentage of funding, of NSF's total funding that we take as a state. If we were to have an equal share of all other 50 states, then our share of NSF funding would be 2%, 2.0%. And we're currently sort of in the 0.26 to 0.32%, and we're sort of to graduate out of it, the EPSCoR program, the NSF EPSCoR program, we want to increase that to 0.75%, 0.75%. The objectives for our NSF EPSCoR RII Track-1 has sort of 4 facets to it: building the academic research infrastructure of the state as a whole, through helping colleges, departments and programs to transform themselves, to build regional, national and international recognition of participants in the EPSCoR program in the areas that the proposal is in. So, you know, putting us on the map outside of the state, nationally and potentially internationally. Then adding value to existing institutional priorities. So there's kind of this match between what you know, meeting NSF national research priorities, institutional priorities, and as I just said in the previous slide or a couple ago, ensuring that there's alignment with the state of Idaho's workforce development needs and priorities for research. And then catalyzing new initiatives that have significant financial and personnel commitments from different our research universities and our colleges. And I'll say a bit more about some of these as we proceed. Our strategy for, in particular, the current development of a Track-1 proposal is to support an emerging scientific theme area, and that theme area has to fit a number of different elements. There's different pieces that come into play here. First of all, there needs to be strong buy-in from each of the 3 research universities. So that means Boise State University, Idaho State University, and University of Idaho. And this is sort of encapsulated in the One Idaho philosophy. And you know, whilst competition is a good thing for the purpose of Track-1, it's about collaboration across 3 research universities and looking at the enhanced value that we obtain through leveraging collaborations of 3 universities. And that is explicit in Idaho's, the State of Idaho's Science and Technology Plan, which is the second item here, aligning with Idaho's Science and Technology Plan. And I'll sort of mention the current priority areas that are highlighted in that, which is a 2017 to 2022 S&T plan. Also, the EPSCoR Track-1 has to serve a national or one or more national science priorities supported by NSF. Broadly, anything that is under the purview of the different directorates or cross-directorate programs at NSF. It must contribute to engagement with Idaho's primarily undergraduate institutions. So we look for how we can collaborate and work with our PUIs to use the NSF speak for our primarily undergraduate institutions or colleges. We also really strive to contribute to engagement with Idaho's underrepresented communities. And amongst these different communities, that importantly includes ideally collaborating with our Native American and tribal communities in Idaho, and then also contributing to engagement with industry partners in the relevant scientific theme area. The process and timeline that we have developed and are just starting to roll out is, first of all, during the current semester through spring 2021, to complete a strategic SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and selection of a RII theme, an overarching theme within which the proposal will be developed. That's just underway now, and this listening session is part of that process for contributing to that. Then through summer, the coming summer, we will be looking to have a set of papers developed that contribute to more detailed proposal topics, sort of overarching research questions and hypotheses, and at the same time starting to identify key research leads at each institution. Those will be done kind of simultaneously together. And then come fall of this year, fall 2021, we hopefully will be then in a process of starting the process of actually drafting the first version of the proposal, which means by then we will have at least identified the institutional leads and an overarching research question or questions and some high-level hypothesis or hypotheses to guide the proposal. Then through fall and spring, building the team out further, bringing in for example, into place some of our early career faculty potentially, and also collaborating and reaching out to other non-university partners that are necessary for the proposal. And then in summer of 2022, preparing the final proposal and all of its entailing supplementary documents for a submission by August 1 of 2022. That's the deadline that we have. So that's a very broad timeline that we're working to. The process has oversight, and sort of the decision making for key decisions rests with our Idaho statewide EPSCoR committee, which is chaired by former Idaho State Senator Laird Ney. Doyle Jacklin is the co-chair, and then we have representation from each of our VPRs ex officio on that committee and have a strong role in the process. And then there are other science, research representatives, some government representatives, and some private industry representatives. So they're kind of they provide the oversight and ultimate decision making on what we do. But sort of on a week-to-week basis, our three vice presidents of research, Harold Blackman at BSU, VPR Chris Nomura at University of Idaho, and vice president for research Donna Liebecker at Idaho State University, along with our chair and co-chair, are the kind of the core group as we work through the process. Whoops. So what I want to next do is just kind of highlight some of the key priorities that we have to look at and that we are looking at that come into play. First of all, some national priorities from an NSF perspective, and these come from a range of sources. The most recent being some of the presentations and direction we're hearing from the new NSF Director, Dr. Panachanthan. The 2020 Industries of the Future, that's a White House Office of Science and Technology plan document, and then the NSF's 2017 10 Big Ideas that many of you will be familiar with. That was then kind of explicitly brought into NSF's current strategic plan, 2018 to 2022. Obviously, we're looking to any new or draft change that might be coming in a new strategic plan, but this is what we have to work with at the moment. And they're broad, they range across a number of different areas. And things like artificial intelligence, quantum science, recent ones that we're seeing. Resilience with respect to changing circumstances, for example, climate change is one that the NSF Director has mentioned. with respect to industries of the future, advanced manufacturing and advanced wireless. And these have all been explicit in the most recent NSF EPSCoR Track-2 solicitation. And so that's worth noting. Harnessing the data revolution that the most recent awarded Track-2 was in, and then the current new Track-2 is in advanced industries and sort of these industries of the future: AI, quantum science, biotech and bioeconomy, advanced manufacturing, advanced wireless. Understanding the rules of life is one that we've had success in with our current Track-1, Gem 3, and several of Idaho's Track-2s. In terms of state of Idaho priorities, these are the current 5 priorities listed in the 2017 to 2022 Science and Technology Plan: energy systems, natural resource utilization and conservation, biomedical and healthcare sciences, novel materials, and systems engineering and cybersecurity. And that S&T plan will be, I believe, is in process for review and revision. So we'll be looking out for anything new that might appear in that. The current Gem 3 Track-1 sort of fits the natural resource utilization and conservation. But note, these priorities are not NSF specific or centric necessarily. They apply across Idaho's needs, and so biomedical and healthcare sciences clearly ties into NIH, for example. And then some of the institutional priorities, and so this is kind of a very coarse level summary of priorities that BSU, ISU, and UI have. Areas such as agriculture and food, bioinformatics and computational biology, energy and energy policy, resilience and sustainability, social sciences, water resources. It's not exhaustive, it's not complete, but those are some of the key things that collectively 2 or all 3 of the research universities have either as strengths or priorities. There are other ones that we're looking at as well. So the development of the theme for this next proposal and the development of the proposal is, I kind of liken it to an alignment of stars. We have to align national priorities, we have to align state, we have to align institutional ones for all 3 of the research universities, and then there are some other important factors that come into play as well. So there's a number of degrees of freedom that we have to work with for this. I want to now sort of pivot from priorities to some other strategic information that we are using to undertake the current strategic SWOT analysis that helps guide where we're going and helps guide the executive committee of our vice presidents for research and chairs of the statewide committee. We look at NSF awards to Idaho, and in this case it's a breakdown by directorate. Note that this is for the period 2015 through 2020, so it's 4 to 5 years worth of award data. On the left-hand side is just the straight dollar amounts awarded by each of the directorates to Boise State University, Idaho State University, and University of Idaho in aggregate. And then on the right-hand side is the number of awards by those directorates to unique PIs. So this doesn't include multiple awards to a single lead PI. But so in the case of geosciences here, there are awards to 10 different PIs amounting to just under $14 million for the period 2015 to 2020. Integrative, that's Office of Integrative Affairs in the sort of purple, very sort of navy blue color. That is largely NSF EPSCoR funding. So that is where Track 1s, Track 2s, Track EPSCoRs come out of. So that's what that is. The rest of it is non-EPSCoR funding, and we do well out of education, so that's supporting things like NRTs or the former IGRTs, other education programs. And then in terms of the sort of disciplinary straight out research awards, geosciences and biosciences are kind of our most prolific areas here and here, and also in terms of number of awards. We have some engineering, computational, math and physics and other physical sciences, and social, behavioral and economic, which is incidentally the smallest. And if I pivot to the next slide, so what I've done here is we have a breakdown by directorate. This is just for 2020 alone. So note, it's only 1 year, and so as in a single year, there could be anomalies, aberrations. But what this shows is on the bottom is the total dollars awarded by those directorates in order of most to least. So engineering awarded, the largest in 2020, followed by mathematical and physical sciences, computer science and engineering, through education to bio, geo, and then the smallest pot of money is social, behavioral and economic, about a third of the largest directorates in terms of dollar amount. In the upper graph here, we show the total Idaho funding. And again, sort of reflecting the previous slide, you see bio, biosciences, strong here, and geo. These percentages are the percentage that Idaho takes of the national awarded dollars, in this case for 2020. And so bio was, in bio, it was receiving 0.71% of the total NSF dollars from that directorate, geo 0.45%, and then on down the others, outside of those, with the exception of education, which is up at 0.44%, are a much lesser take. So that helped. This is one piece of information that helps inform where we have strengths and where we potentially have opportunities to also increase growth in competitive funding. If we then look at our doctorates awarded, because that's another piece of information that's important. This shows a breakdown of science and engineering doctorate recipients by field of study for the period 2015 to 2019. So that's a 4 to 5 year period shown here. Life sciences is our strongest, 155 PhDs awarded across the 3 research universities, followed by engineering at 91, and then physical sciences and earth sciences at 71. Social sciences, including psychology, at 53, and then mathematics and computer science at 17. So, this somewhat reflects some of the information that we're also seeing previously in the external competitive awards out of NSF. Another piece of information that is very helpful is our sort of outputs, in this case publications, and this was this is one summary from a lot of information we received from Elsevier, who undertook an analysis of our research universities' publication outputs for 2015 through 2019, and it mirrors a similar study that they did for the 2010 through 2015 period. So what I've listed here is a summary for this last 5 year period, 2015 through 2019. On the left-hand side is the output, just the raw output in terms of number of publications, and then on the right-hand side, one measure of the quality. So if you like, this is quantity, and then one measure of quality, basically citation impact. And the top 5, this is aggregated for all three of our universities. Agriculture and biological sciences is the highest. These little side arrows just indicate the trend compared to the previous 5 year period, the 2010 through 2015. So ag and biosciences is producing the most, and that number is steady. It's about the same as it was in the previous 5 year period. The measure of quality, the impact is is quite decent, and it's also steady. Social sciences, which is our next in terms of quantity, that increased from the previous 5-year period, and citation impact increased a little as well. Engineering is our number 3 across the 3 universities, which also showed an increasing trend both in terms of quantity and the measure of quality using citation impact. Environmental science is just after engineering. These two actually flipped in order compared to the previous period of 2010 through 2015. So they're pretty close in terms of numbers 3 and 4, and then computer science number 5. And most of these also have an increasing trend in terms of quantity and quality, or a steady trend. There's a couple of others that I've pulled it a little further down the list, which have fairly high citation impacts on average: Earth and Planetary Sciences, Biochemistry, Genetics and Molecular. And then multidisciplinary publications I've added in here, although the quantity is quite modest. It showed the largest increase. It almost doubled from the previous 5-year period. So that's kind of information in terms of sort of the output side, if you think of awards information being kind of the input to research competitiveness. And I'd note that these are just a couple of metrics. It's not complete. There's many other things that we can and do have to look at, but this is some of the information that we're using in our strategic analysis, in the SWOT analysis. I want to sort of pivot back specifically to the Idaho RII Track-1 proposal and proposals, and I'm just going to very briefly mention the previous Track-1, and in a moment the current Track-1, just as a sort of a point of context. So the previous Track-1 that ran 2014 through 2018, almost 19, was MILES, Managing Idaho's Landscapes for Ecosystem Services, and that had a focus on capacity in the state to resolve complex social ecological processes associated with urban growth influence changes for ecosystem services. So ecosystem services was kind of the core intellectual kind of area for it, and then mid-scale, small to medium scale cities with growth around the periphery was kind of sort of some of the more sort of the methodology driven parts to it. The current Track-1, GEM3, Genes by Environment, Mapping, Modeling and Mechanisms, looks at linking genome to phenome to predict adaptive responses of organisms to changing landscapes. And the sort of the overarching research goal is to predict how plants, animals and also people interact and adapt to changing environments, with sort of a more pragmatic outcome in terms of sustainable management of natural resources. And some of you are familiar that the focal taxa for it are red-band trout and big sagebrush. So two quite different proposals and projects, but that context is helpful if we sort of do some hindcasting and look what we've supported in the past. So here is the entirety of Idaho's NSF Track-1 investment history, all 5 of the previous and current programs. And there's some sort of interesting trends in terms of research areas and approaches that have been supported and have been important, some that have come and gone, others that have come into play more recently. In terms of the kind of infrastructure improvement, our early ones really focused on investment in equipment, and we've sort of more recently in the last 3, and particularly the last 2, including our current GEM3, highlighted human capacity build out, particularly in new faculty and in postdocs. In terms of research areas, ecology has been ubiquitous, to a larger or lesser extent in all 5 previous and current track ones. Hydrology was important in our second, third, and fourth. And it has a modest component in Gem 3. Computational modeling has become particularly important in the previous one and particularly important in the current Gem 3. Social sciences has come into play more recently, and particularly in our current Gem 3 and also in Miles. In terms of sort of an integration focus, and I think one of these really clear sort of elements of NSF EPSCoRs is the ability to undertake large-scale collaborative integrative science. Very few other programs anywhere in US federal support and even in NSF support the sort of integrative collaborative research that that NSF EPSCoR Track-1s do. So social ecological systems has been important in it was in Miles and to some extent in Gem 3. Statewide collaborations have been particularly important recently and still are currently, and by that I mean that it is a collaborative effort across Boise State University, Idaho State University, and University of Idaho, and that the three and teams from the three have to work in concert collaboratively in order to successfully run the program. And so that's notable. And then transdisciplinary approaches, of which SES can be a transdisciplinary approach, but transdisciplinary, which in particular means science engaging with non-scientists and engaging outside of the university. And so with research partners in Gem 3, for example, Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, Idaho Fish and Game are key partners, and we have a number of other stakeholders who are also sort of important non-university or non-research institution partners in allowing us to undertake the program. So that's some of the if you like, the palette that we're working with in developing and looking to develop the research theme for the next proposal and develop that proposal itself. So to summarize, some key elements in our RII, our Research Infrastructure Improvement Strategy, are that it has to represent a strong statewide university collaboration. So BSU, ISU, and UI as collaborative partners in this. The importance of non-research institutions as partners in the program. Importance of developing and enhancing faculty positions, if you like, the human capacity infrastructure kind of component. Leveraging synergies among university research institutes where it makes sense. And then I'll just highlight that the Track-1 is not a straight out research project. It's actually an integrated research, education, and workforce development program for which the research is kind of the catalyst to build things around. But ultimately, it's looking at how we build workforce development that is directly in line with the state of Idaho's needs. And with that, I'm happy to open up for questions, for comments, for input on any of what I've presented here and hear what you have to say. Thank you. You're welcome to use the chat to put in a question. You're welcome to raise hand, or you're welcome just to unmute yourself and ask a question. Go right ahead.
Hi, Andy.
Hey, Chris.
I've been kind of thinking about miles and then the transition to Gem 3 and past EPSCoR investments, and looking at those strategic plans from NSF and the state of Idaho, and wondering to what degree you anticipate the theme sort of continuing to build on past investments, or are there going to be external pressures to pivot in another direction?
It's a really good question. I think there's a sweet spot between identifying something that doesn't repeat a previous one, and it's important to realize that an important component of a Track-1 is it leads to sustainability beyond the EPSCoR funding. And so, on the one hand, it would be inappropriate to go, okay, we're going to do a repeat of miles or Gem 3 because it's basically saying we didn't develop the sustainability that we promised we would. On the other hand, I think there is sense in picking up some aspects, whether it's themes, approaches that have emerged as being important in a recent one, and continuing some of those and demonstrating that we're leveraging to some degree without repeating. One thing that in the proposal that we're required to provide is a list of people or personnel who are named in the new proposal who were in either at least the prior EPSCoR Track-1. So NSF are looking at how to that extent, and it's fine to have some people, if we're talking about individuals, to have some people who have been involved in a previous one, but then we also need to be looking to support new faculty and researchers across each of our institutions. And there's a sweet spot, and I don't exactly know what that is at this point. Rick, you've seen the transition from all of our Track-1s. Anything that you'd add to that one?
No, I don't have anything to add. That's a great answer. Our track record has been quite successful in the past, and when we've been successful, we tend to try to go in a direction that builds on past investments but doesn't repeat them. So we've never done a 180, so to speak. So, but yeah.
So, I guess a specific question is, it seems like the NSF rules of life was more basic science, and now the industries of the future is a different sense to it in terms of that call. And I'm just wondering how much that's going to play into it, or do we just come up with the best program we think we can fit into those broader, to all of those collectively, or do